This is it. We're recording, and this is the beginning of another episode of Dowcast. It's been a while since we released an episode, but a lot of things happened in the past 2 weeks or so, including the Berlin Blockchain Week. So a lot of people around decentralized governance were congregating there. I didn't have the chance to go, and it was difficult to schedule talks. But now that people are back to work and back to their normal activities, we have a couple of recordings planned already. So stay tuned for that. And today I'm joined by Max Shemet. Well, I'll need your help for
Uh,
the Semenchuk.
Semenchuk.
Semenchuk, yeah.
Semenchuk, everybody.
Yeah. Where are you speaking from, Max, by the way?
I'm usually located in Kiev, Ukraine.
Kiev, UK. That's nice. I think you're the first Eastern European that we've had. So welcome, Max. And we have a lot to talk about today. I'll give the stage to Max soon. I just want to contextualize a bit. He has been working with the DGOV Foundation, which is a foundation that has been doing a lot of research around decentralized governance. I like it that they bring the complexity the complexity science kind of toolkit and paradigm into it, and they have been also organizing a lot of events and a lot of meetups where people can explore what decentralized organization means in their own local context, and that's something that I find very valuable. Another thing that Max has been doing is engaging with a lot of different projects within the DAO kind of sphere, right? So he's a member of the DAO incubator, also the Common Stack, which I discovered recently, and I definitely have some questions around that. I'm following that project at the moment. And one of the cool things that he did, and which is actually what brought me to speak with him, is this very nice map of the DAO space, or I'll let him speak about it, but it's called the DGOV Network, where you have players and DAOs and projects building DAOs. And it's all mapped in this network format, which which I'm a fan of. And it's one of the things that since the time I worked with DAO Stack, I wanted to see happening, but we didn't have so many DAOs back then. So it was more like, oh, let's map things that don't exist yet. But now there are enough of them, so we can map them, and Max did that. So I find that very nice. And well, heads up, if you are listening this on audio only, you will probably not see the map, but we have a video recording which is in the website. But yeah, that's kind of like my rant for the beginning of the show. So I would like to welcome Max, and maybe it would be nice to hear from you what you've been doing and maybe a more updated introduction of yourself.
Yeah, sure. I can give like a 3-minute history of me coming to this space overall.
That would be great.
And yeah, a bit of context. So I built like first of all the UX UI designer career, and 8 years ago we started a small IT firm that did development for different startups and so on, called Fire Labs. Around 2 years ago, we like it's already 3 years. We were on the crossroads where we wanted to enter a new market, a new sphere. We selected blockchain, but back at that time, it felt that the amount of information, the news, projects, and so on was overwhelming. And I, being a CEO, wasn't already. It wasn't possible for me to be the one man telling people where to go. So we got a bunch of guys, like senior engineers, and we started to talk like about how about starting a new venture. We will be all partners, and we will be like driving this change inside an organization. And we wanted to like, in my vision, we wanted to be the like fully equal partners. And at that time, I started to think, so how do we make decisions as a like group of five? You know, my previous experience was pretty tough whenever you needed to select somewhere to go, something with a group of 5, as usually a tough one. Everybody has an opinion. It can take hours to make a simple decision.
Mm-hmm.
So around that time, I started to look for new ways how to organize this. I found Holocracy, and we introduced Holocracy inside our company, and it went so well. I started to first of all promote the concept of such governance and management in Ukraine first, with especially with this reinventing organizations and Holocracy information. So we started locally. Then due to my technical experience, I thought about more global and higher scale governance possible with blockchain and technology. Around that time already, 1 year and a half, I found Tim Banzemer, my partner in DGOV now, but at that time he just tweeted let's do a conference on this. And I was, yay, let's do that. And we started to prepare this conference, and we started to find that who are the main people, speakers, agenda, who's at that time there were almost no community overall, for distributed governance, so to say. There were
when was
local
that? Sorry to interrupt. Around which year?
So it was around spring last year.
Okay.
Yeah. There were there were communities around, for example, DAOs and Aragon, and there were also P2P Foundation. So usually the model was either it's just Ethereum general community or products community, but what we lacked was the dialogue between major players, because the task we're trying to solve is pretty hard. Mm-hmm. And we try to pool resources together and identify what's going on, what are the main challenges, and so on. And at that time also there was only Genesis was working for it, really just starting, and we had no other DAO except of the DAO, of course. Mm-hmm. So we started with the conference. It didn't went as well as we planned, because we were newbies kind of in this space. And also it was as the conference was planned end of last year, that was the exact start of the crypto winter, we can say, or maybe a bit before that. So we lacked some funding. We also saw that we started to gather the community. We started to collect the mailing list, creating the chat, and we started to get some traction, but not for as big conference as we planned, because we planned for 600 people or so. But it was easy. When we started to announce that, the initial 100 of people came just in a week or so. Mm. So everybody who was researching that was kind of, yeah, let's do that, and let's talk, let's collaborate. And when we understood we're not going to hit this goal with the conference, we already had some of that, and we thought that how do we want to proceed with it? Maybe we will postpone the conference. That's what we planned, but we will start doing smaller scale events and community events. So since last year, we directly or indirectly created around 20 meetups all over the world, from Kiev, my hometown, to Caribbean islands, and lots of them, of course, in Europe, also in US, and so on. We had a big event called DGOV Council in Berlin, start of this year, and where we gathered 50 people from the space for 2 days, and started to discuss things and find interesting projects from that. Mm-hmm. A few things emerged, like the research we did. Mm-hmm. Let me know. I can talk about that.
Yeah. I'm just curious, listening to you now. Who are the people usually coming to these meetups in terms of their background? Because I imagine they are not necessarily tech savvies and people who fully understand what decentralized governance means. They might actually be newcomers and curious people about this concept. So will they be coming from business? Will they really be coming from tech? Is there any kind of like demographics like that?
Okay. Well, we can say the core of the community is like DAO enthusiasts that whatever happens, they want to have a DAO. Like I can say I'm also somewhere there, but it was just people like who saw a big like who really wanted big change, like in the how organizations are run today. So we started to analyze a bit more, about the background of those people. So of course, lots of them are somehow connected with the companies that develop products in this space. Of course, like Aragon or DAOstack or Colony and so on. Some of them are researchers or academics who research the topic or now are looking to do that. From economics point of view, organizational point of view. Then we can say so-called practitioners, people who are like looking to start DAOs, for example, to solve their needs or problems. We started to get a lot more of the so-called self-governance people who care more about the human aspect and human relationship in this interaction. So previously we kind of got more technical people trying to solve the problem from the like tokenomics point of view, right? We will incentivize this and disincentivize that. And now we have more people who already are trying to build new types of organization, but rather starting from the change in the relationship paradigm, so you can, for example, decrease the need in trust by technology, or you can just set up the high level of trust like from the beginning by building human relationship, and thus no need, for example, for centralized management afterwards when people trust together. Right. So I think that
from your experience, do these different players interact well, and can they has there been cooperation scenarios within these players?
Well, it's not due to our community, but I saw a great I can say success in Genesis, or at least some like good progress when Genesis started to introduce more self-governance practices. So, for example, what Kate Beecroft does, and I know some other facilitators who joined the community, and introduced some of that.
Yeah,
Francesca Peak as well. So based on that, I saw like I see really little potential in the projects where we lack those people. I think it won't just happen due to technology, so I'm finding it really important.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think at some point I had more of a technocrat view over things. Very in the beginning of my exploration to this space, where I was all excited about all these algorithms and protocols. It's like, yeah, that's gonna make people, come and participate and even change their behavior. But then, well, we realize that humans are more complex than that, isn't it? And yeah, I think the whole space has a lot to benefit from the soft technologies that have already been developed and implemented for a long time. And you mentioned Kate, Francesca. I think they come from the Inspire environment, isn't it? The Inspire network, and that's a place where they've been experimenting with it for a long time now. Definitely cool. And what did DGOV organize for the BBW, the Berlin Blockchain Week? I bet you have a presence there.
Yeah, so Web3 was kind to give us a hackerspace node. So in the other area out of their main stage, they had few nodes on different topics, from digital identity or zero knowledge and so on. And we had this a DGOV node where for 3 days, 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., we got like first third was the lightning talks from people from the field. Then we had some panels on different topics like inter-DAO cooperation, or radical liberalism, stuff like that. And at the end of the day, we had workshops. We have, I can send you the link with all the recordings and meeting notes from that.
That'd be cool.
That was like somehow it was reincarnation of our plans with the conference, because we got already like in mind many people who we wanted to see. So we gathered like 30 great speakers, best of the best on their topics from different fields.
Amazing. Please send me the resources. I'll attach to the notes of this show. And
Sure.
what was your feeling and overall thoughts around the week regarding the space in terms of its development, challenges? Because I was not there, so I'm very curious to hear about what was talked around, like especially the the unofficial kind of conversations. Those are more interesting for me. Like what kind of like what bubbled up around there.
So there was one like interesting panel with the self-sovereign ID specialists from Yolocom and Consensus and Identity and so on. And they talked with like what are the main challenges. The technical side is pretty difficult, but one of the questions was like why we have so many identity solutions. It's like more than a dozen, right? All in development. None of them are like integrated somewhere. How we can develop some standards so those solutions in the end would work together or would support each other with some development pieces and so on. And I got an insight from all of them that it's really hard to find the standard until there is like some body of practice, which is non-existent so far. So we don't still know like what would be the requirements for which customers and so on. And maybe it's good to have some like several experiments running at the same moment, because all of them have some slightly different vision and they can address a bit different needs. So maybe the field of interaction is more intellectual about how we, for example, position it to the governments or somebody like that, and who will be driving those specification needs, what are the main like target audiences and so on. So at the one hand, it's hard to collaborate. On the other hand, there are some conceptual questions we need to discuss and question each other, to get to the right place.
Right. Yeah, I think.
And we can transition.
What's that?
And we can transition this idea, I think, to the DAO space as well. So
yeah. I think your insight is exactly on that point, right? In the sense that these identity protocols and solutions, they might be shaped differently depending on the use case, right? And for governance, they do have some specific kind of requirements. Let's say sometimes even when you want governance that ensures identity, but does not necessarily disclose it, right? So having that kind of specificity is definitely needed. It's cool that people are talking about it, because so far I really haven't seen developments on that. I know a couple of projects who are working on it, but as you said, not so much integration, which I think is important for the sake of this space. Okay, so that's interesting about the week. On DAOs itself, was there anything that caught your attention in terms of news or any kind of new thing in the field?
So we got also a panel with Moloch DAO, Meta Cartel, and I think Aragon. Don't recall. And like we can say like Aragon also, like they told about their experience. They like I'm thinking about who holds the most funds, and who's like the most interesting case. So on one way, Aragon Association is not like a full DAO. It's still like you vote, but somebody clicks a button in the end to disperse funds. But they are running pretty big. So the experiments are quite interesting, and how they tackle this. Interesting discussion with Moloch as well, how they managed to get Vitalik and Joe Lubin to participate in Unsupported, and then are holding all these funds, and they talked a bit about how they see, how they see this experiment and where do they want to lead it. Meta Cartel puts a lot of attention to the coordination. So, like, for example, Moloch started basically with like a closed Telegram chat, and Meta Cartel started with the public forum and Discord. So you already can kind of like, before that, I learned a lot about how Genesis is organized. It's also really interesting. And we, by the way, have this research about how all these DAOs are formed and how they work in our wiki. So we start to build these case studies. And in this case, Genesis is one of the most interesting, but also it was interesting to know how new people built on like their new DAOs, like Moloch.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned your week. I'm browsing through it now, and I think maybe this is a good moment to share my screen here. So we go a bit more on DGOV. So now that's the map. We go back to that soon. But this is your main website, right? A distributed governance network, and yeah, well, your proposition here, how you connecting people to discover practice, implement technical solutions, and create complex, I love this, scalable governance systems that create cohesion and allow people to flourish. Yeah, you might not know up front, but I'm kind of like I'm a self-declared complexity enthusiast. So I really like this text that Phoebe put forward not long ago, right? 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
And I even highlighted some of the things here, which I hope the add-on will show. It's not showing at the moment. Oh yeah, it is. In any case, I like the contextualization of the crazy moment we're going through in terms of the real risks that we are facing. And I think that we look at similar sources. I see you guys mentioned Danish Mattenberger. You mentioned a couple of other things that I've read. I think that's really important groundwork in the sense that we acknowledge the importance of the work we do when we talk about collective intelligence and distributed governance and all that. And I like what you said as well, in the sense that you're interested in systems that allow for emergence, right? In the sense that we can really bring about things that collectively exist, but that they're not can be reduced to any of the parts or entities that make up that whole. And then you bring the concept of holons. I like that. That's the kind of conceptual food that my brain really likes. And when I read the text like this, and I recommend everybody listening to come and check it, my curiosity is how that kind of theoretical approach is being implemented into your practice. So when you talk about DGOV and you lay out your foundational assumptions, how is that being translated into what you do? And for that, maybe it would be nice to hear from you. What is it that DGOV is doing at the moment?
Okay. So first of all, DGOV is it's around 500 people now, the DGOV network in general, like whoever joined us, provided some details. And we have 7 core people who are working on the operation side of things. Also lots of supporters who help with research and so on. But inside our small core team, we have weekly calls, we have Holocracy structure, and inside our products we try to whenever it's a newsletter, you can see the people connect with that. So for example, our newsletter is kind of an open thing where anybody can submit the information they want the network to see. So we previously, like, as it's all on the wiki and it's open to submission via GitHub, anybody can, send us something uh, and distribute it across the network. But also, like, the newsletter is structured itself. It's breaking down into few segments. So I write like the first, like, community update. Anya writes about what happens in the crypto law. Pedro sends us like really nice memes. Jack like from OrgTech sends us the top like 5-7 articles from his media and so on. So this was one of the examples where we are not where we try to engage community as much and open up it for anybody who wants to contribute. That's one thing. And for example, our events, the meetups, are usually structured in a way where lots of time is given for the self-organization. For example, when we do a meetup, we start with lean coffee format. We can have like few talks, really small talks. We call it lightning talks, like 10 minutes or so. They don't take much time to them, but allow some information for harvesting. But then people put up the topics they're interested to discuss on the post-it papers on the wall. And then people vote what they find interesting. And then we discuss first topic, which is discussed is the one that got most of the votes. So this is one of the examples how the product is organized in such a way.
Yeah, some soft decentralized technology there, right? In terms of and one of the things that I read in the article is that you encourage local meetups and well, kind of like local nodes of DGOV, right? Where you have local nodes up and running at the moment? Is that something that you're mapping?
Yep. So we can't say, like, the nodes are usually formed around the meetups. So whenever somebody wants to do a meetup, they kind of start a node. There's not a lot of technology built around that, so we're not even using meetup.com or something like that. Maybe a subject to change in the future. But for example, Tom Ivy from Edgeware, Conwell's Labs, he's in Detroit, and he did 2 meetups in Detroit on this topic. We have Ella Kagel from who works with us in DGOV Foundation. She's also running a space for facilitation and cooperative discussion and so on, called Supermarket. And we also did some events there in Berlin. There's also like events in Spain, in UK, where, like, in London, where Phoebe is located. And yeah, like, even Caribbean, we have Luke Weber from Netherlands, and they have this Curacao DAO. Yeah, and they did event in Curacao with Anya. So that was kind of cool.
Nice. Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's a place where maybe listeners to this episode, they can go and check if there's a DGOV meetup happening around them.
You can go to the wiki.
Okay.
And click on meetups in the bottom.
Yeah,
meetups. Is it here? Yeah, maybe below.
Hubs.
We started to do some like work around that. It's not fully complete, but we at least started to map, what are the center spaces who, like, for example, like Tribute in Paris and so on.
Right.
So, like, where the movement can, start.
Yeah. Cool. All right. So yeah, I invite people to come and explore this week. I'm doing it myself, and there's interesting things here. And you will for sure come across what I found to be the most nice, or the nicest thing you've done, which is this map, the DGOV Network. And maybe we can jump a little bit around here, which I think nowadays is perhaps the most comprehensive DAO, kind of like decentralized governance map around, isn't it? I've come across a few other 2 or 3, but I don't think they were as comprehensive as this one.
Yeah, right. I've seen the previous attempts to that, which were nice as well. I think overall this network mapping is quite a nice exercise. So for me, like I didn't plan it too much. I just like at this Web3, I've got connected with this guy from Gov Commons, and I thought like, what is Gov Commons? I don't know what's that. And I check it out, and it's okay. Let me play. Usually, when I come over some interesting tool, I
Yeah.
start creating some sample thing there just to understand how it works.
Yeah.
And first of all, I added like 5-6 people, and then I started to like. It looked really nice when it's all flows. You know, when
Yeah.
you add some ties, it became restructuring like a live organism, and it was quite unique for me. And uh, as we talk with lots of people in the space, I think currently DGOV like is at least knows about many projects and many people in the space that are in the community and so on, and that's most interesting things were when you knew the person that works in several projects and you show these ties, and you can see, for example, by the like network theory, you know, there is like sometimes the biggest value is not in the like center node that which has most of the connections, but with the nodes who has unique connections.
Right.
Like this guy, you can approach this amount of companies only through this guy. He's on the only thing, only one connected. And you can see on the right this EOS branch, for example, which is like stands apart on the graph, because so far I'm not aware about how it's connected to the centrals here. But this is like a separate world. We don't usually like discuss that too much.
Yeah,
But,
I was thinking just about that watching the graph. Like whoever connects these kind of branch to the other larger network is probably somebody very interesting to talk with.
yeah, for sure. Because I think they also have some interesting governance experience.
Yeah.
And I can also share some like story about the bias. So I was speaking on one of the panels, like in blockchain conf in Sweden.
Yeah.
And there was this guy, Hitusi from US Sweden.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm like a big fan of Ethereum. I say that, Ethereum is the best. EOS. I said something like EOS is corrupt, and I think I hurt his feeling a lot. You know, I usually don't do like that. And after this like talk, I started to question, you know, how much do I really know about EOS besides like reading like 2 or 3 articles of people who do that? What could be a rationale of these people? So while there is some ecosystem there, you know, what is there like something we can learn from them? And so far, it's just a dark horse. Like we of course know that they have a bit different like values or point of view, we can say, but also my learning from that is like we sometimes get too stuck with our ecosystem and our filters, and like totally ignore part of the world that is happening.
Yeah. That is for sure. Well, and on that note, I'm happy to see here that even the different projects you have, Aragon, Genesis around DAO Stack, Common Stack, I love to see how interconnected they are, because a feeling that I had maybe in the early stage of the whole space is that these projects were silos of themselves, in the sense that, there were not many connections or even attempts to connect the different ecosystems. But here we see at least some people that are permeating the different projects and networks. So that is definitely something nice. Well, let's hope that we soon find nodes here connecting the larger thing with the whole EOS ecosystem, which I'm sure is interesting. As well as Democracy Earth here. See, I've followed a little bit of it, and also Santiago is kind of famous in Latin America for what he did in Argentina. Yeah, I'm speaking from Brazil, just for context. So it would also be nice to see how these things are connecting to the larger ecosystem.
Yeah, the map is it's not in the final state.
Right.
It's all work in progress, and also there are some design decisions made here. So I've put the connections only when I know that people work together in a partnership or something.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, for example, Santi is connected to almost all of these people, like in
Right.
Chain Blue. But I also didn't want to overcomplicate, personal connections. I was kind of more showing the cooperation, alliances or something like that.
I see. Yeah. And you did it all yourself by hand. There was no like automation of
Mm-hmm.
the stuff. Yeah.
Well, this Graph Commons tool allows you to export the CSV or
Mm-hmm.
like any table to integrate it. But of course, um, every connection made here wasn't wasn't digitally there when I added this. So I
Right.
had list, for example, of people, but it wasn't. It didn't state any connections, for example. And currently, it's like 230 nodes or something, and
Mm-hmm.
more connections. Um, the thing that after we did this, I saw some discussion started about the like identity in our space, and how we can automate that and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the projects we started to talk about inside DGOV Network and the core group was about some form of DGOV self-sovereign ID, where something like that would be possible without the human factor like me, for
Mm-hmm.
example.
Yeah, so on that note, I might have something to contribute. So I really like network mapping and all that. I've done a couple of network mapping, but my tool of choice is Kumo. I don't know if you're familiar with or if you've heard of it. No. So it yes, no. Yeah.
Thanks, and haven't seen it.
Yeah, so it does pretty much what Commons Graph does.
Okay.
I think it has more of a nicer user interface.
Oh, I
You,
see.
as a UX person, you might enjoy that. And one of the things that I have done with it in my own kind of mapping is that the maps around Kumo are also fed with a table, right? And one of the things that I've done is we can get anyone here just so we have a feeling of it. I have connected a Google form to one. Well, the Google form has its own table, and then I've wrote some sort of small transcript to bring the results from a Google form to the table that feeds the Kumo map. And then there was a optimization process there in the sense that anybody filling the form would have the map would also be shown in the map. And one of the things that I find that would be interesting to experiment, especially in the DAO kind of decentralized space, is some sort of even incentive mechanism to bring people to contribute to the growing of the map and to the updating of it, right? And that could be reputation within a DAO, that could be some sort of other reward. But I imagine that this kind of map could really be, if we are talking about metaphors, it could really be the body of a DAO or the body of a decentralized organization, right? And when I talk about a body of an organism like this, I really mean a body that is, changing all the time. So like it's like things grow, things contract, and I think that can be very. I think in terms of clarity of what's happening in this space, that can be very valuable. Well, I try to find one example here of Kumu. Maybe this one will open up. And yeah, you can also build presentations on it. But the first thing that I thought about when I saw the map you built was about Kumu because
Mm-hmm.
that's my tool of choice. And yeah, the presentations here, yeah, they give you a glimpse of what it looks like. So you have this left tab on Commons Graph. I think you have a right, oh, not it. You have a right kind of tab, right? but I'm not sure how much information you can add to this tab. Whereas here in Kumo, you can pretty much, this is a markdown file you're reading here on the left. So you can add a wealth of information on each element of the graph, as well as the connections, which I find
Mhm.
very interesting. And well, you can add any kind of media, videos, whatever it is to it, as you have here. And then, yeah, you have tagging system that shows the map differently. Anyway, this is a tool that I like.
That looks really terrific. To
Yeah.
be honest, when I run into this software, I had no anything to compare. I
Hmm.
found that it's a thing, and there are a few companies working on that, and
Yeah.
looks really interesting. I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah. And the Kumo guys are pretty welcoming of newcomers, let's say, and they're really helpful in terms of helping us creating maps. They have a almost a community management person that deals with that. So I just
Mm.
wanted to put that out because I think there might be synergies there. But I really want to thank you and congratulate you on this work. I know how massive of a work it is to put a graph like this
Mhm.
together when you're doing it by hand. So thanks for that. And well, I also don't wanna get you for too long here. I know you're running on a schedule, but I do want to talk about your involvement with the Common Stack because this is a project that I've been. Oh, and that's so nice. You can click on it and you can see who's connected. You are the. Yeah,
Mhm.
I really see the value of this kind of network map. Well, I'd love to hear how you engage in there because I find this project very promising in what it's trying to build. And I've talked a lot with Michael or Zargan as he's known, and we really discussed deeply all of the foundational design and engineering approaches of this project, and I think it's one of the most robust ones in this space. So whoever's connected to it, I like to hear from them.
Mhm. Yeah. So my role currently in the common stack is more about like building the processes and
Hmm.
like somehow project management or something like that.
Hmm.
It's still like in the development, so it's not like fully structured, and that's maybe would be like my task to structure
Hmm.
it better. So there's now a bunch of really motivated people who see big value in that and put long hours, like Jeff, like
Yeah.
doing that like all the day, every day.
Yeah.
uh, and this the whole like idea is first of all, if you don't know, like the common stack, the purpose of the organization is to change the tragedy of the commons to the like something like festival of the commons. So
Hmm.
how what tools we can bring to this community environments and allow them not to struggle specifically with funding or decision making, but how to uh, allow good tasks to and good people to uh, find even financial benefit. And this is where we use things like bonding curves. So for each comment, we can issue the bond, like the token, which will be programmed to grow in price with the growth of the demand, and always like uh, you can um, price the token or the whole economy better based on the market mechanics. And Z Michael makes like this part of work around modeling. So they have this tool CAD, which
Yeah.
allows modeling for this market environments and
Yeah.
make experiments how the token and the price will go based on different set of parameters.
Hmm.
They showed it, by the way, on the DGOV forum, and you can see the video of his talk there, which was quite nice.
Hmm.
Where we had this demo of what we already have, and the idea and plans are pretty complex. Like more than 1 year ahead, we see that we will start with the token engineering commons. So we'll kind of eat our own dog food with it and sponsor our own development and the initial commons that will spawn this research and product. And then we will add conviction voting mechanics, which is more like innovative and more should be more efficient in decision making with current environment we have, and so on. So there's a system of several components. We understood it once that maybe it's even too difficult to explain everything we're gonna do. So now we're focusing on the main first stage, and we're gonna work on that first.
Fair enough. Yeah, I am also very excited about this project to see where you will go. Definitely in the mid kind of long term in terms of really experimenting with it, right? Yeah. Okay, Max. I think we are capping our time here. I do wanna ask you one final question though. My feeling listening to you is that you are involved with so many projects. We didn't even talk about the DAO incubator, but you are really permeating this network. You almost, well, in this map, you're almost a central node, meaning that you're really in touch with different approaches towards decentralized governance, and you're a researcher of decentralized governance. So I think it would be really valuable to hear from you, at least like a couple of words on what do you think are the what is the development of the space as of now in terms of its maturity? Is it ripe? Is it mature? How long should we expect to see more of it blooming? And perhaps also some of the challenges we're facing at the moment.
Okay. First of all, about me being in the center, yes, I'm trying to fit many projects at once. That maybe puts me in the center, but it's also a map done by me, so it shows my point of view, right?
Yeah,
so if you would do that, maybe like you would be in the center or somebody else. So it's just like my horizon of view. And regarding the challenges and development of the space, well, I can totally say that like the year after the DAO, it was almost a dead year in the DAO space. Like lots of people became pessimistic or maybe not so inspired, but I think last year was pretty booming. You can tell when we see like I see news about somebody creating a DAO almost every day, right?
True.
So of course, most of them, like you can see, like on Aragon, like 500 DAOs. Of course, most of them are just created, and maybe there are no funds or no operations, of course. But in total, I'm super optimistic about the further development. I think that it proved to be quite innovative and effective, and many in the blockchain space. I know that many managers or ecosystem builders, they think more about this distribution by DAOs, for example, distribution of power, distribution of funds, and also the fund case. Like from the one point of view, we don't have a solid research telling that here we established the fund. If we would have a manager, we would have this amount of efficiency and this amount of justice, right? And now we set up a DAO, and now like we saved some costs, and we increased the level of trust. We haven't measured that. We don't have like Genesis is running for a year or a bit more, right? And Moloch is like 3 months or 2 months. So we are still not in the place to say it became like a new like standard or something. But also we see that people create more new funds. So in general, at least on the like feelings level or idea level, it's successful, and people look to experiment more with that. And fund distribution is pretty solid case for DAOs, I think. And also by building this map, we somehow added people who are not doing just tokenomics or like mechanics, with the addition of more conceptual thinkers in the space. We're getting to the place where we could look systematically on that, because the field overall needs interdisciplinary approach. You need economics part, political part, besides just technical part, user experience part, and so on. Most DAOs, by the way, are not so user friendly.
Yeah,
you can
I
say.
agree. I agree.
So we need to, like, people are coming there. Well, what is good is that like the Inspire guys who did some software like Lumio or like budgeting software, they see potential in the blockchain, and blockchain sees potential in them, I think. So now it will become stronger even more.
Yeah, they're here as well, right? They Inspire. Yeah, awesome, man. Awesome. Yeah, I think you raised good points. Especially, I don't think I've seen anybody talking about this, especially like the real increase or maybe decrease of efficiency in decentralization, right? If we have a manager managing a fund, and if we decentralize it, we haven't really compared to do kind of like a counterfactual uh, experiment on that. And well, on that note, I think the most exciting thing about the DAOs and the space for me is just the possibility of experimenting, right? And at this moment, we have a lot of labs. Let's call it that way. Maybe we could even think about each one of these DAOs as a lab, and then having them experimenting. Cool. I also like what you said about the map and the importance of it, so as for us to have a holistic view of what's happening and who is associated with it. I think that's really important for the space. I'm open to chat more about that if that's something you keep working on, and perhaps we can even add a DAOcast around here too. I think that would be nice.
Let's do that.
Yeah, and on that note, I think we can bring it to an end. It's a shame we didn't talk about the DAO incubator. I'm curious to see where they are at this moment, but maybe that's a topic for another chat, right?
Yeah, so, and maybe we have a team there. So Matt or Danny or Jem could be also nice like people to talk to about that.
Yeah, they've been on the show. We have Jem, Danny, yeah, but that was when DAO incubator was being incubated. So there's news there. In any case, yeah, go ahead.
Maybe just another like mention of the development of the work is EthSignals, another group I work on, which is trying to improve Ethereum governance with better signaling.
Okay.
So what we do now is we try to accumulate the stances on controversial issues, like specific EAPs or funding of the ecosystem in general. So this is like a really tough task, as well as Ethereum is quite huge and doesn't have a like clear like constitution or anything we can rely on. It's still like some things are more clear than others. And also like lots of stakeholders. One of the most challenging parts, I think, in governance is managing groups of stakeholders, and we have at least like 6 or 7 in Ethereum in general. And we produce experiments about how we set up the signaling system in such networks.
And when you say, I don't know about your time, so you cap me if you need it, but when you say signaling, what do you mean? Because now I'm curious.
Yeah. So, for example, there is like somebody proposed an EAP, let's say per EAP. And what happens, it just at the time it went to the GitHub, it's not included to any release, or it's not set up to, we'll do that. Somebody will pick it up on Twitter and say, I'm totally against that. And somebody will answer, are you stupid? I'm pro that. And for example, when Ethereum Core Dev call starts and they discussing this, one of the things they want to know is like, what is our community thinking about that? Would we lose part of our following, for example, part of our nodes and so on, if we introduce that. If it's connected with the miners, what would happen there? Like what would miners be okay with decreasing the fee or not? When the issue is there, everybody starts to signal their preference, whether for that or against that. But it's hard to measure this on Twitter because there are some really vocal people who are pretty visible, but they don't represent, even if they get like 1,000 of likes, it's not even like a % of the community or something, right? We can't tell. So what we started to do is, besides usual coin voting, which was used in the, for example, the DAO fork decision, we added the opportunity to not just see how many people voted. Like you don't just see how people vote based on their amount of coins they have, which is usually the thing, but also on the gas they spent from these addresses. So this gives us a more of a perspective of what users and app developers think, because you don't fall, like you have kind of Plutarchy, vision, and you have then like Gazarchy, something like that. You can see another point of view from that. And we used the Twitter rating from Hive 1 to show on the graph top 300 influencers, how they think about this CAP, whether they're pro or against. We tried experiment with the Kialo, the platform that allows more sophisticated debate, where you don't see this person said that or this person said this, but you kind of see the main argument, all the like pros, all the cons. Under each pro, you can pros and cons, and people signal how they feel, like if they feel strong about that or less strong, and so on. So it removes the human aspect towards the logic aspect. And so this is the level of task we're working with right now.
Nice. And is that being tested, or what kind of stage is it at the moment?
Yeah, so we started to work with that like almost a year ago, and we produced a product called Tanograph, which includes all these features, and we started to use other things like Kiala, and all of that is based on the real Ethereum data. So for example, we took one of the coin votes done some time ago during the DAO fork, and we analyzed what are the portraits of the people who voted for or against, and found some insights. So all of that is kind of built on the live data, and we send this data to the Ethereum community and foundation to use.
Very cool. I bet that's a valuable data bank for them, for decision making.
Yeah, it's also like I can't say it's like too big. It's all the experiments, we try to keep them lean, and make something that can be tested quickly, and see if there is some need in more information, or if that like with this map, when I shared it, it had only like 20 nodes or 30 nodes. When I saw that people became interested, we started to develop it further. So that's why I'm talking about that, to see if some people would learn about this and telling us that they want it or need it.
Fair enough. And if people want to see more of that or get involved with it, how do they reach out to you?
I think if you're interested in governance in general, join our community at DGOV Foundation. You'll get an email with all the link to resources like forum and case studies, and link to the chat. And I'm in the chat, so when I'm easily accessible in the Telegram.
Fair. You're also fairly active on Twitter, right? What's your
handle? It can be hard to write it like Semenchuk, Max Semenchuk. Yeah. But yeah, you can also go to DGOV Earth Twitter, and it usually retweets the tweets from our team as well.
Yeah, I ended up getting off the sharing here, but here it is at DGOV Earth. And here's you.
Yep.
Max Semenchuk. So it's SEMENCHUK. Chuk. That's your last name, right? Alrighty, so I think we cover a lot of ground. I think it's a good episode, and it's a good moment to end here now. Unless you have some last final remarks, I think we can say goodbye.
Yeah, thanks for listening to that, and hope you found some insights for yourself.
I certainly did. I certainly did, and I hope our listeners as well. So thank you, Max. Thank you for whoever's listening to this, and see you next time.
Cheers.